For the longest time, I thought Bon Iver was one dude.
No, same. This album is where I found that out. That
Really?
I wasn't.
Are you serious? No.
This was the album that I was like, oh, not one dude. All right, good to know.
No.
I definitely thought it was a dude.
But
for sure.
for the longest, I would say up until Folklore by Taylor Swift, I was like, oh, Bon Iver is more than one guy. I thought Bon Iver was one dude.
I definitely thought it was one dude. Good afternoon, beautiful people. This is another episode of Album Mode. We review a new album every single week. We look at the lyrics, the production, the overall aesthetic of the album, and how the album fits into the context of that artist's career. For everyone watching on YouTube, make sure you like this video and leave us a comment. Let us know how wrong we always are. My name is Adriel Smiley, a.k.a. AdrielSmiley.com, a.k.a. Adriel Smiley Official, a.k.a. The Godfather. We're here with His Royal Highness, a.k.a. The Bunny, a.k.a. No Longer a Munch, King Grant.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Album Mode. This time we're reviewing somebody that has just been lurking has finally reemerged. Bon Iver. SABLE. fABLE. One of these artists that has... Bon Iver is one of these artists that kind of just is in the cut.
Mm-hmm.
He'll pop up on a Taylor Swift record, pop up on a Kanye record, pop up wherever he feels or wherever they feel they're needed. And they're finally back as a band. For the longest time, I thought Bon Iver was one dude.
No, same. This album is where I found that out. That
Really?
I wasn't.
Are you serious? No.
This was the album that I was like, oh, not one dude? All right, good to know.
No.
I definitely thought it was a dude.
But
for sure.
for the longest, I would say up until Folklore by Taylor Swift, I was like, oh, Bon Iver is more than one guy. I thought Bon Iver was one dude.
I definitely thought it was one dude.
But yeah, Bon Iver, their album SABLE fABLE is out, and it's one of these albums that I would say I was indifferent towards its release. But I've been aware of the band for over 10 years now.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's one of those where I'm like, I guess, I guess it's happening. I guess.
I think why they're so interesting is they're just a name that if you're a fan of music, honestly, almost any genre.
Yeah, you'll just see them.
You've seen their name before. You might not even know what their music sounds like. And you mentioned Taylor Swift, Kanye West, Charlie XCX. Like the list goes on in terms of features and collaborators. But I think what other group or artist can we think of who's in this space where but people don't really know what their music sounds like, but everyone knows their name.
I got it.
Okay.
Sampha. Sampha is a perfect example for that. You're only thinking no because we reviewed his album 2 years ago or a year ago.
Yeah.
And we're like, this is amazing. But before that, I think it was like legit like 5 years or something like that.
I don't really want to say Sampha in this because when I first heard of him from him working with Drake. That was the first time I had heard of Sampha. But once I tapped into Sampha, I realized that a lot of people who are big Sampha fans. I was just not hip. We are 10 years later, and I have not met a huge Bon Iver fan. So I think it's a little different in that way. But Sampha is a person who I think was close to this, at least at the beginning of their career.
Right.
It felt like, okay, I hear your voice, but
he only had one project up until 2023. He had one project that came out in 2017.
Yep.
So that's why I'm like, oh, it's kind of like Bon Iver, where like just in the cut. Everybody loves them. Always like, oh, we should get Sampha on this track.
Yes.
But Sampha didn't put out their own record for 2017 to 2023. That's what?
Yeah, 6 years. Yeah.
So that's a significant amount of time. Can you think about how much music has changed
in that
time frame? So Bon Iver is very much similar, where their last album came out 2019.
2019, yeah.
6 years. Again, we're talking about 6 years, bro.
Yeah, this is their fifth studio album. I'm not gonna lie to you. I haven't listened to any of their previous albums. Maybe the first one, Bon Iver. Yeah. That's probably the last one I remember listening to, that 2011. Can you picture what I looked like, what I was doing with my life in 2011?
No, but I will retrieve a photo. So that we can put it in the YouTube video.
Nobody wants to see that. And nobody wants to see
2011 Adriel, like, come on.
Oh my God. No beard, little chin strap. It's funny because my doppelganger, people say now, is Brent Faiyaz, which I don't agree with. But
I do.
there are worse doppelgangers to have than Brent Faiyaz. But at that time, people say my doppelganger was Kid Cudi. And I'm like, you know what? Could be worse. These are two decent doppelgangers. So
I totally understand too, because I've seen the old pictures of you,
yes.
So I definitely see what people are talking about.
Okay, I said it could be worse. Could be way worse. How much do you listen to Bon Iver? Because this is an artist who, again, we are very much aware of.
Yeah.
But how much are we actually listening?
Yeah, the last time I listened to this band was probably Bon Iver, to be honest with you. That's why I was really curious as to why you in particular advocated for us to review this album.
Let me give myself some credit because Spotify tells me differently. The last album, I have some songs saved from this. So
good for you.
I'm got to give myself more credit. Smarter than I thought. Smarter than I thought. Why I advocated for this project was Justin Vernon had, I guess, been outside more. And this is, again, a rare artist where everyone knows who they are, but their music is actually not as popular to the masses. Now, to be fair, they have a ton of songs that have done incredibly well on streaming. They had a song on the Creed soundtrack. Of course, their collab with Taylor Swift did well. They had a song from the last project that has 130 million streams. So maybe we're not paying attention, but the bills are being paid.
Somebody else is.
Yeah, it seems like they're doing okay. And then last but not least, before we even get into the production, what do you think is the best feature on here?
I think that is Flock of Dimes. I think Flock of Dimes really outshining everybody else. Even Daniel Haim, which I was surprised at. I didn't know that those three sisters like left. I thought they were kind of like symbiotic, you know what I mean? Like I thought they just always were them and never separated. But I think it was Flock of Dimes on day one. I just love that track. That's probably my favorite track on the entire album. So I think that Flock of Dimes, what they did in that track was basically, this is like the first song on the entire album, I would say, that sounds like it was made in 2025. Like the production style and then the way the vocals exist on it are actually modern.
I wouldn't say it's the first one, but I'm with you on where you're headed with this.
So I would say it was Flock of Dimes.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that one. It really stood out as soon as that voice came on. I think as well, the 2-disc thing with this project, I don't know how I really feel about it. I think it makes sense in terms of the sound of the 2 discs, in a sense. The first disc is very, very slow, very, very melancholy. So I understand in that sense, but I think it's kind of off that we get 2 discs that are, one is double the other. Like, how often do we get that on albums that are quote unquote 2 discs? Because in the traditional world where we would get physical CDs, is that a thing that would happen? I don't remember that.
No, I like the first part. I think it's up to award season.
Yeah,
is effectively an EP.
Yeah,
right. So I'm like, you would just get like an EP, and then maybe they would just like, maybe the EP would be at the end of the album. Like the album would go at the top, and then you get like the EP at the bottom on the disc or something like that. I don't know. It's a weird release cycle in a physical sense, but I feel like in a digital sense, people do like EP1, EP2.
Yes.
Right? And then they'll just like combine them to make a full album. But the way that they decided to work with this was a little bit off the beaten path, I would say.
I would say there's something there in terms of the pre-release, which I think is a good way to start getting into production, because that's why I actually was, tapped into this project, because this is probably the first time that I was listening to Bon Iver singles before an album.
Me too. I'm going to be honest with you.
I was like, okay, Everything is Peaceful Love was the one that got me. That's probably one of my favorite songs on here. But a lot of the songs from the first disc were released in kind of a prior EP, Everything is Peaceful Love, which was a bunch of the singles.
Yeah.
So I think, to me, it kind of affects the way I look at this project, because in reality, if the project started at track 5, maybe this album gets a whole different score. But most of the songs that were released prior were from the first disc, which I think is a interesting move for them to do in the first place. But that's a way that I'm looking at this project is, there's disc 1, which is most of the songs that were released prior, kind of the promo for this project, and then disc 2 where the real meat of this project is.
Yeah, I think I'm the opposite of you, where I'm like, if you just gave me the EP, we'd be talking about a different score for this album.
So you like the disc 1 better?
Yeah, I do. I think that there's more emotion in the first disc, where I just felt like the lyrics are actually affecting me in a sense. Like the production style, I think, is super quiet.
Yeah.
In the first, like things behind things. It's just very lonely piano. You get a little pitter patter in the background, like
yeah.
But it's very, very lonely. I like loneliness. I like loneliness when it comes to folk.
Yes.
Anything guitar based, folk, indie, country.
Yeah.
Give me the loneliness, because it's sad. It's sad out here.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I like that, and I liked it. And same thing with Space Side. Again, very lonely. The guitar by itself. Long intro.
Yeah.
They love a long intro.
Yes, for sure.
Why they love a long intro is something that we can discuss further later. But they love a long intro. And I think on Space Side, that emptiness reinforces the loneliness of what is actually happening in the lyrics. So I like that it's just like very, like, you can barely even hear the guitar on Space Side.
Yeah.
And I liked that. I liked that a lot.
I think that's where they thrive, honestly. Like, I think this is what they do the best. I think disc 2 to me is more interesting in the attempts that they make, but I think where they actually nail it is actually on the first disc. So it is a juxtaposition in that way, where I like the experimentation it feels on disc 2. That feels more interesting to me. But I do think they're way more in their pocket and do a better job on disc 1. So it's kind of a weird conundrum that they have put me in mentally. The song that I thought of production-wise, and this is the one that I think is the first song that gets a little different production-wise, is Short Story.
Okay.
I feel like thinking about that as an intro, very, very interesting in terms of an introductory song. And this was the record where I thought that, his voice doesn't really have the vocal range. I think there are times where they kind of make it work and there's a lot of emotion in the vocals, but I think this was the song that I was like, okay, the vocal range is not here all over this project. I was going to listen to hear more, but this was the song that it stood out to me. But I think the strings building that crescendo on here really, really works.
Yeah, I think I like it too. That's one of my better songs as well. I think that is probably the best time. This is probably the best time on the second project, where the building and the long intro.
Yeah. Oh my God. The long intros.
The uber long intro. Let me say something a little bit about the long intro. It was starting to lose me on a bunch of the songs. I'm just like, let's go, like, let's get to the song.
That's what the first disc is for me, because it's like you have this long ass intro and then the song doesn't have that dynamic value where there's kind of a payoff.
Yes.
But
it happens on this song, at least.
It almost feels like with the long intro on so many of these songs, sometimes it feels unearned when you get to the meat of the record. So that was my biggest issue, is that I actually like the songs at the beginning of this project, but the long intro, it's like, I worked too hard to get here. Just start me at the top without building me up for this.
Yeah, exactly. A good example of this is If Only I Could Wait, where I'm just like, let's get to the song, bro. Like, I get it. We're trying to. Here's the thing. A long intro. I like it's like, here's the thing. Okay, here we go. If you're gonna do a long intro, the production has to be like, there has to be a payoff, like you mentioned. And there also kind of has to be like an intricacy that does not really exist when it comes to this album. So If I Can Only Wait, it's like drum roll, and then there's this one like synth, and like the one synth in the background. That's kind of it. Like the next element that builds onto it is like, I think it's a ukulele maybe, or I can't really, it's a ukulele or like a badly like or something that's like not tuned properly. And I'm not saying that is bad. It's just like it sounds like something that's like tuned improperly. Maybe it's like a harp or something.
Yeah.
But the 30-second lead up time to the actual part of the song is not worth it. I that's part of it. I was literally like let's go. Like, you know what I mean? Like literally when I'm
Getting
like,
impatient.
Like when I'm listening to this album, that happens to me a lot where I'm just like, just give me the song, bro. Like just give me the song. Like it's not enough to just to spend 30-40 seconds building up to the song. Just give me the song.
And I think talking about the payoff of those, it really made me think about an artist who maybe I'm a little bit surprised Bon Iver hasn't worked with, but it's Travis Scott, where he loves a long intro in some of his records,
Right.
but he makes sure that payoff is there. I think about Rodeo, that was one of his albums where he did that a lot. Maria, I'm Drunk, even Antidote, 3500, where even 90210, where there's this whole intro and this lead in and almost like a story being told to start the record. And then when you get to the meat of the record, it is just boombastic, dynamic, so many things going on, where it's like, I almost forgot that I waited this long for this, you know? And I think this is a different style of music, so we're not asking for Travis Scott drums in the middle of these records, but I think there is that feeling of, what did I wait all this time for? You could have just brought the guitar in full force from 5 seconds.
And I think the difference is Travis Scott likes to work with Tame Impala. Where Tame Impala loves a long intro as well.
Yeah.
Adores a long intro. Multiple minute long intros
my goodness.
in Tame Impala songs. But there is a crescendo. There is like some sort of production marvel or crazy hook or something like that Bon Iver doesn't do that. Or they didn't, right? They didn't do that, where even if we're going through these long intros or these like super elongated intros, it's just like there is no production marvel in their music. That their music is not like that, right? Or at least this album is not like that. And the lyrics are not, he's not trying to jump off the top rope with a certain hook or a certain lyric or a certain motif. Like there is no sticking point to pay off the long intro. And even throughout the song, there's so many times, like even there's a rhythm, I'm just like, where is the rest of the song? Like I'm just waiting for like something else. I'm just waiting for something else. Like where's the next thing? Where's the change? Where's the key? Anything, really.
Yeah, I think a lot of this project is not that. But there are some moments in the second half of this album, the second disc, where you do see some of that experimentation. And
Day One.
There's some of that. Day One is definitely included in that. The two that I want to bring up, one, I like Short Story actually leading into Everything is Peaceful Love, the songs blending. I thought that was a nice touch. It's almost basic at this point. We've seen it enough times, but don't take it for granted. Okay, when it happens, we got to appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then Walk Home, that was one I did feel like was a 2025 kind of song.
Yeah.
Just that like slow drums, the heavy bass, like there are some like R&B, soul, popish artists who are doing stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, that feels modern here. But the thing is, the voice modulation, especially at the 2-minute mark, kind of gave me some Frank Ocean vibes.
Yeah, it's like a Frank Ocean, Steve Lacy, like scenario that's happening. Yes, that is one of the songs where I'm like, this is a 2025 song. You know, like, what do we mean by that? I think that's something that we should probably explain. When we say this is like a song that's made in 2025, what do you mean by that?
Kind of the production is up to date with what people are actually doing in terms of the sounds. Like I think that wobbly bass is Thundercat made that very popular, but a lot of other artists are doing that now. The actual drum pattern, because I think the older folky sound of the first disc is an older sound. That's like a recycled sound that's not new. I think a song like Walk Home, if we were doing this podcast in 2005, how many albums are we going to hear with something like that?
True.
Not that many. So that's what I mean when I say a 2025 sound is this a sound that is more current in terms of a past artist either it's not doing this at all, or it would be revolutionary if it had been done 20 years ago.
Right. So I think like for a song like Day One, which is another song where I'm like, this is a 2025 song, is that the production elements we're using tricks or elements from other genres, like you said with the R&B, where it's like for day one, the chop samples, that's a hip hop convention.
Yep.
Right? And I'm like, okay, we're actually introducing modern music to folk music, right? And I think about when I was listening to this, I actually spent a lot of time thinking about Mustafa.
Okay.
Right? Because Mustafa is a folk artist who has found a way to pull hip hop and various like lyrical motifs into a space that most Black people are not fully engulfed in. And he was able to pull themes, whether or not it's production wise or just like lyrics wise, from a different genre and transplant it into folk, which is something that Bon Iver has struggled to do on this album. I feel like they tried to on a couple of songs. I would say Day One is like one of the times that it actually works.
Yes.
But otherwise, it's so rooted. fABLE, sorry, is so rooted in the folk conventions where I'm like, this is tiresome. Like I listened to it and I just over the entire project, near the end, especially like where I'm like at From If Only I Could Wait. I'm just like, so what? Like I actually think to myself, I'm like, okay, and
so what's crazy?
like so what? Like and what? Like I don't like we're okay, I guess. Like sure,
I think what you said about tied to the folk conventions is maybe might be the thesis of this whole album, because I think songs like Walk Home and Day One, to me, those are singles. Like
those are singles today.
Those are singles today, and I think that song, if given the right press promotion, that could be a song everyone's like, oh my goodness, like when last time you heard something like this?
Yeah.
But it's like they take this almost ingenious and experimental production and force it into being less dynamic. And it's like, here's all these cool things we're doing. How can we make sure this stays less dynamic? And I think that's the folk convention you're talking about of this has to still be in the folk lens, the folk group. So to me, I think that's what's holding back some of the production here. This is my last production.
From is the worst culprit. Oh my God.
Okay, that's where I'm headed next.
Okay.
From is probably the one song here that's like almost a traditional format, like regular drums, regular keys. It feels kind of like 80s-ish, like it's like not yacht rock, but like a cousin of yacht rock.
Yeah.
And
boat rock.
Yeah. Not yacht, but just boat.
Just boat.
Speedboat. But it's kind of, I think, on this project miscast because I'm like, I'm a huge yacht rock fan, so this is like would be my favorite song normally. Right. But I think it's just kind of like a subdued version, and it stands out to me because of what it's around. And I think that's some of these songs on here is like, because all these long intros and not being dynamic and things feel kind of drawn on, we're almost pulling for anything to be like, oh my gosh, drums.
Yeah.
When it's like, inherently, this is not a great record to me. It feels very kind of basic. That's I'm talking about, from SABLE fABLE.
Yeah.
But I do think that because of everything else around it, it kind of stands out a little bit. But again, my biggest thing production-wise, before we get into lyrics, is I don't think any of these songs are actually bad. I just think a lot of these songs are songs you hear where you're like, I can hear how this song could be better almost right away.
Yes.
After the first listen, it's like, okay, you made sure to not have a crescendo here. You did your best work to make the bridge as subdued as possible.
Yeah.
So I think that is how these songs feel, is like you try to kind of, water down these. Because to me, Walk Home, Day One, and From, again, all three of these could have been singles and could have been more dynamic in the way they were produced.
Yeah.
And I think like, you know what? Let me give them some credit. It's unique. It is unique to have these kind of almost experimental, like 2025 pop, soul, indie production styles, but keep them in that folk lens. Like, to be fair, we're hating on it, but we haven't seen anyone do that, and at least in albums we've reviewed in a long time.
Yeah.
We don't love it, but we haven't really seen it.
Yeah, that's true. I think that it's maybe because there is to make folk music, things kind of have to be stripped back.
Yes.
But to approach the things that we were talking about R&B and like hip hop conventions and stuff like those genres, especially hip hop, is like in a maximalist space right now. So there's this tug of war that is happening production wise, even with I'll Be There, which is probably one of the better produced songs as well.
Yep.
Where I'm like, okay, yeah, Steve Lacy, like again, I'd be like, Steve Lacy could have done a song like this, or like the internet could have done a song like this, and they would have, there would be more groove to it, right? Or there would be more.
That's a good. There's not that groove.
There's no groove.
These most of these songs are inherently undanceable.
Yeah, but I'll Be There. If it was made by the internet or Steve Lacy, you're dancing to that music.
Two-stepping big time.
So I think that because they're trying to make sure it's like, we still make folk, we still make indie, that they have to strip away certain elements where if, even who's the guy that we also reviewed? It was like a black and white album that you loved. It was an R&B album. It was
Lucky Day?
year. Lucky Day.
Yes.
Lucky Day, Steve Lacy.
Oh yeah, that algorithm would probably fix a lot of
it. Would fix everything on this, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's missing that, like, let me be honest with you, it's missing the black part of the music, bro. It's missing the
I was gonna say it's missing the blackness.
Yeah, it's missing the black part of the music where like that's the danceability, that's the smoothness.
That's the soul, the groove.
Yeah, so it's just missing those elements, but it's because it's so rooted in being folk, being indie, they don't want to detach fully. It seems like, to me, they don't fully want to detach and like just lean into what is actually happening on the song.
I agree with you. Because I think that juxtaposition almost makes these worse. Where it's like, if they just chose the folk indie lane through and through.
Yeah, it would be better, actually.
It actually would be better. And then the other thing I think of with this, and this is before I get to my first piece of lyrics, is you brought up Lucky Day, Steve Lacy, the internet, Sid, all, I think, better vocalists than Justin. I think that's a big part of it too. And then I think like a lot of these songs don't have that kind of off-kilter production style with the drums that give it that like danceability.
Right.
And not danceability where it has to be like, 130 BPM. Like just like we can two-step, almost kind of like what the Free Nationals do. Where it's like the music isn't necessarily fast, but I can groove to this. And so I think that's what's missing a lot here. I only have one set of lyrics, and it's from one of your least favorite songs.
Okay,
so I think we're in a good spot here. There's a rhythm. And I think we talked about this on a couple of reviews ago with Men I Trust about their vocals not totally being audible in terms of what they're saying. Bon Iver has a little bit of that, where it's like, I can't totally hear what you're saying here. It's not whisper singing because I think he has some force in his voice.
Yeah.
But it's adjacent to that. On verse 2, he says, on There's a Rhythm, I've had one home that I've known, and maybe it's time to go. I could leave behind the snow for a land of palm and gold, but there are miles and miles to go, and I've been down this road before. There's another chance to show, no need to crow no more. That obviously is talking about him making the move to LA and kind of looking back at his past life and, am I going to turn my back on that life? Am I going to change? I think the way that they did this, to me, feels almost more poetic than just simply leaving the hometown for the big city. I think there's way more emotion in this verse of that, of like, it's deeper than just I'm leaving for a job or leaving for a career.
Yeah.
It's like I have a life here. Things are tied here, and I think that is what they do a good job of. And I think lyrically, honestly, I like a lot of this project lyrically.
Yeah, I like the lyrics too.
I think there's a lot of good stuff going on here. I just think it's not a good job done of actually highlighting that.
Yeah, I think that, first of all, Justin Vernon, not a dynamic singer. Like, I don't feel like he is trying to do a lot of different things. I think it's like we found our delivery for this song, and we're sticking to our delivery for this song.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
And I think that the songs kind of suffer for that because there's already this tug of war happening with the production, and then to give a vocal performance that is not spectacular in any sort of way, again, makes the songs like like again smooth, not smooth, but like gripless, like the tacticity, I guess is, I don't know if that's even a word, but the tactileness of the song is stripped, because I'm like, okay, the production is in this tug of war. The lyrics are cool, but the guy singing them, not really, like, I don't get an emotion. Like I very rarely feel any
that's
sort
the
of
first
emotion.
disc.
Yeah, this is the first disc. That's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say Space Side, then we get some emotion. You know what I mean? But the rest of the songs, I'm like, I'm not feeling anything. Listening to them, and your lyrics don't even need to be deep, or even intricate for your songs to evoke emotion.
Yeah.
Right. And I was not getting that on anything except for the first 3 songs, I guess. Space Side is probably the best, my favorite when it comes to the lyrics here, where Justin Vernon, he is like talking about basically like regret, and basically like suffering through the regret and how badly it hurts. So this is on verse 2 and verse 3. It's like, it serves to suffer, make a hole in my foot, and I hope you look as I fill my book. What a waste of wood. Nothing's really like I thought it would. That's the break. I can't rest on no dynasty. Yeah, what is wrong with me? Man, I'm so sorry. I got the best of me. I really damn been on such a violent spree. So the self-destructive nature of Justin Vernon, or we'll say Bon Iver, the group, the self-destructive nature of like their life is something that gets highlighted in that song, which is cool. Like I think it's really interesting to actually talk about that, to like, even to say it serves to suffer, make a hole in my foot. Like that's how, like, first of all, shooting somebody in yourself in the foot is like self-destructive, but also like it serves to suffer. Like I should be suffering through this. Like that's how bad I am with the decision making. And I hope you look like you want a person to see that they're suffering through the self-sabotage, like, because they like, it's almost like a thing where it's like, it's self-sabotage, but I also want people to see that I'm self-sabotaging because I'm an idiot. Like I want people to acknowledge that I'm stupid. Yes. Right? So I thought that this is really interesting. Like it's a really interesting songwriting. And again, look how short this is. This is verse 2. I'm going to read verse 2 again to you. It serves to suffer, make a hole in my foot. That's the end. And I hope you look, and as I fill my book, what a waste of wood. Nothing's really happened like I thought it would. That's it. That's 5 lines in a verse, and I already got a nice picture of exactly what the part that I was explaining about shooting yourself in the foot. That was 2 lines out of the 5, and I got that much meaning out of it. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm like, your songs don't have to be super intricate to evoke emotion. You're getting that on the first 4 tracks, and then it's kind of just like scattered throughout the rest of the album. At least it was to me. And I think that's probably one of my biggest issues when it comes to the songwriting, even though when it's good, it's great.
I think that's probably my biggest issue with the whole project is not the production. I think the production, there are things that I don't love, but I think the production as a whole there's enough shots, bites at the apple, you could call it, that I'm like, I can't be mad at this. I think you're maybe too tied to the folk. That's a separate issue.
Yeah.
But while being tied to folk, you did attempt to step away. You did add hip hop elements. You did add the R&B element. You did add what I call a modern element. So I can't be mad at artists making that attempt. But I think, lyrically, this album suffers because it's not a good job of kind of highlighting the lyrics enough. And I think that if the production was better, where it's like, I could have liked the production and not care about the lyrics. But I think this album as a whole really kind of drags.
Yeah, I agree.
As a whole, because the songs themselves individually, not as bad. But as a full project, a different kind of listen.
Yeah, it feels longer than it is.
Yes.
This is only a 40-minute. This is a 40-minute album where 2 of the songs, I think it's like 13 songs, where 2 of the songs, 13 songs, 2 of the songs, the first song, like track number 1, is 12 seconds. So it's really only 12 songs.
Yeah.
and it feels like it takes like 2 hours to listen to.
I like when I'm setting aside a time to listen to this, I was setting aside way more time than I needed to. And you're right, because it felt like, okay, this is like an hour and a half. Set your time aside. Like, it reminded me of that long-ass Taylor Swift album.
Yes.
What was the Ballads of the Poets or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
Dead Poets Society. No, Dead Poets Department. Something like that.
I almost said Dead Poets Society. That's why I was headed right there. But I feel like this album has that kind of energy. I want to talk about what this means for their career, unless you got more lyrics you want to get into.
No, I think that's it on the lyrics. I'm just like, yo, the production is hiding the lyrics in a bad way.
Yeah, that's exactly how I would say it. Exactly.
It's hiding the lyrics in a bad way, because I'm like, if you actually can get to the lyrics, I'm like, there's actually some good stuff happening here.
I think for their career, though, this actually is a positive. even though we just like
shit on
I feels like we have 35 minutes of negativity, but
yeah.
I think this is a positive for them, because I do think there are 3, 4, maybe 5 tracks on here that will make somebody's playlist, depending on what you listen to. I think Space Side is one where it's like, if that's your vibe, you can definitely put Space Side in the playlist.
Yeah.
You know, I remember listening to this one time and some Zach Bryan came on afterwards.
Yeah, this is exactly.
And I'm like, you know, you could put these in the same playlist. Everything is Peaceful Love, this little song I like a lot. Day One, I think, is still something. Walk Home, I think, can be in a playlist. Mm-hmm. So I think an artist like them, who we know the name, but how much records do we know? An album like this that is essentially, you know, what is this? 13 songs. One song's an intro, so 12 songs.
Yeah.
When you got 3 or 4 that can make a playlist, that's usually a win. That's usually a win. So I think if I'm going to be objective, this actually is a win. I think the album as a whole maybe doesn't hold the same value, but there are 3 or 4 records on here that I can see going into someone's playlist.
Yeah, From can make a department store playlist.
Yeah. Right there next to Harry Styles.
Exactly. Literally exactly. Yeah, I think it's technically good for Bon Iver because it's been 6 years since the previous album. So just putting out a nice compilation of a group's work is always a positive. Also, the increased visibility is great for the band.
Yes.
I think that the only setback I can think of is that waning relevance, like as a collective, because Bon Iver, they were their hottest in like 2013, probably.
Yeah.
That is over 10 years ago. And I feel like we're not winning back many people with SABLE fABLE, I think. Or maybe we're winning back people, but not new people. I don't think so. So that's maybe my only drawback. But otherwise, if you can get your band to be making music for over 10 years, that's a win, just on a personal level.
for sure. They're basically at 15 years now, because Forever Emma.
Yeah.
For Emma Forever Ago was 2008.
Yeah, see?
So they're... But
that's a big plus, bro.
And I think, too, like, they'll be a group that can tour almost until eternity, at least on the festival circuit. You know, I think about... you know, Skinny Love for Emma Forever Ago is at 700 million on Spotify.
Yeah.
You know, so they can have songs that can have like a resurgence because they have all these different sounds. And, you know, new fans can kind of come back at any time. I think the one thing I do want to see going forward is if something will change in terms of them being more of like an actual mainstream act. I think this is one of those where if you listen to music for long enough, you've heard the name. But how many people know the music? Will that change going forward? I don't think so, but I'm interested to see.
How many Black people do you think will be on the next project? I think that is an interesting concept for me, because they have collaborated with Kanye before.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm just thinking about the songs that we were talking about where I'm like, oh, this is a modern song. Or this is a song where I'm like, it has all the elements except for like the Black parts or like the groove to it. I'm like, in the next iteration of Bon Iver, will they actually lean into those parts that are actually very good? Those parts are good.
Yeah.
But we need an extra, you're at the 90%. We need somebody to push you over the finish line. And I'm like, are they willing to bring in that Steve Lacy? Are they willing to bring in Lucky Day? Are they willing to bring in those extra people? Because they collaborated with Kanye, but they've also collaborated with Taylor Swift most recently.
I would say no. I would say no, because 2 things. One, the collab they did do with Kanye is very much more like their folk stuff and not a beat song, not a dancey song. So I think it kind of sticks to what they are already doing more than what Kanye's been doing or had been doing at that time. And then two, on top of it, I think listening to them now, especially like since it's been 6 years, is to me their biggest strength is their songwriting. But it's almost like, why would you need them vocally on a certain record?
Right.
You know, and I think especially on this record, they have other good vocalists on here, but it's like, you chill out. Don't give me all your talents on this record. We don't need all of that. So I would say no, because I think a lot of people you're naming who are possible collaborators vocally are on a different level, and I just think those two together maybe is not, you know, something that could work. But listen, fingers crossed. We'll see. Of course, in the comments, let us know. Okay, all the big Bon Iver fans, who do you want to see them collaborate with? Is there an artist out there you want them to collaborate with? Démar said Steve Lacy.
Right? Yeah, Steve Lacy. I'm looking for a little bit of a Lucky Day. Frank Ocean, if you can figure out where he is.
I want to see them collaborate with like the real underground R&B artists that are popping up now, like the Chase Shakur or Isaiah.
That would be interesting.
Or Isaiah Falls. Like, I think that could be interesting, but again, I'm not holding my breath for that. Okay, Daniel Haim is on here. I think that's more the lane we're gonna say, and if I had to guess.
But you know what's interesting about that? When you listen to Haim's music, you know, one of their most common comparisons is like, oh yeah, this kind of sounds like a Michael Jackson song.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So they're kind of like circling and circling and circling. And so we'll see if one of them actually figures out that maybe you should get some black people on your music.
But I think they've shown, like, as collaborators, they don't do that. Even when they collaborate with Taylor Swift, is like, when they collaborate, it stays how they like it to stay. You know, I haven't seen them collaborate as much. Charlie is probably the closest on Charlie XCX.
Yeah.
But when they collaborate with someone, it's like, no, we still doing what we do. You know, it might be your song, but we're still going to do what we do. So I think you're asking for a big change for them to kind of step out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, I mean, they have one person, Dijon. That's it. And that's the song that we're saying that sounds modern.
But even Dijon on that record does not sound like normal Dijon.
Yeah, so.
He has a bunch of records where he is vocally way better than that. So that's kind of why I'm like, they're coming in the studio and saying, hey, chill out. Okay, chill out. None of those crossovers, okay? It's a simple dribble we're doing here. Too much
spice. You're putting a little bit too much, spice inside this right now.
Okay, let's talk about the cover here.
I like the cover a lot.
I do too. Yeah. I do too. Very, very simple. It's literally just a square inside of a square.
Yeah.
I like this color, the kind of peachish color. I'm almost matching, we'll say. But like peach color, black in the middle.
Yeah. I think it looks cool. Yeah, I think it looks cool. Again, we have championed sometimes simple is best.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that this is one of those sequences where square inside a square, it's an interesting shade of pink. It's kind of like the Miami Vice pink.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's it. It doesn't need to be, super intricate. I think it looks cool. It's very easily distinguishable.
Yes.
It stands out in a very obvious way. So I think it's cool. And I know it's just like a square and a square, so there's not much to say, but it looks cool and it looks distinguished.
No, I agree. I do think it looks cool. This is not a vinyl cop for me.
Oh, okay.
The cover alone would make me think about it.
Maybe off the vinyl cover.
This is more like 25 years from now, if this is in the dollar bin, and I see this cover, I'm getting it. But as of now, full price.
No.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And it's not a no skip. So let's just get that out the way.
Wow. Don't even let me ask the question.
No. I just get that out of the way. It's not. Do you think it's a no skips?
No.
I'm like, don't even try.
And I'll explain why it's not no skips. And I kind of mentioned this earlier. It's just like the intros are too fucking long. So there's just times where I'm just like, let's go to the next song, bro. Like, it's taking too long. The song is taking too long to warm up. Let's just go to the next one.
An album feeling longer than it is. We don't talk about a lot of albums like that.
Yeah.
That may be one of the worst things you can do for a project. Like an album feeling longer than it is when it's not a long album at all. Yeah. I think that is like something you'd never want to do.
Yeah, and
never want to do.
And it's also in the sweet spot. It's 12 or 13 songs, 13 tracks, 12 songs, 40 minutes. That's the sweet zone. That's where we want you to be. And for it to be like feeling like it's an hour and a half, that's a problem. Yeah,
so it's a no for me, dog.
Yeah, me neither. Okay. The moment we've all been waiting for. Adriel,
Mm-hmm.
what is your score for Bon Iver's SABLE?
SABLE, fABLE. SABLE, fABLE for me, to me, this is a 4.
Oh,
Yeah, I can't even give it the 5 of it being average, just because this album is so cumbersome to listen to. I listened to it again today while getting some work done in the morning, and I was listening to like mostly like old soul music during the day, like, you know, the Spinners, Al Green. That was kind of the vibe I was in. I put this on in the middle of all of that, and it felt so slow and dragging on. And I'm already listening to some older slow music.
Yeah.
So for it to feel like that, I think is a problem. I think there are good moments on here.
me too.
And this is probably one of those albums that we review where there are not that many actual bad songs, but the album is worse as a whole than the songs individually. And I think that, to me, is a horrible, horrible thing for an album to have.
Phoenix songs of music right now. Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, that's rough.
This is feeling very Phoenix Suns like.
Yeah. Phoenix Suns might be worse. Phoenix Suns might be worse than this. But I think that is my biggest issue is I think there are songs on here that I could show someone and they could be like, oh, this is not bad. Oh,
Yeah.
I rock with this. But the whole album, I wouldn't want to ruin the friendship that way. So to me, it's a 4 out of 10 for that.
Okay. So for me, SABLE, fABLE by Bon Iver. It's a 4 out of 10. It is worse than mediocre, I would say.
Ooh, that hurt me. It's not even my album. Damn.
It's worse than mediocre. I think that songwriting is cool. If you can get somebody to actually like want to listen to the songs all the way through, like, oh yeah, the songwriting is pretty cool. It's like, yeah, that's pretty interesting. But to pull people through the 30-second to a minute-long intros just to get to the beginning of the song is a tough ask. A lot of the songs I feel are just stuck in the past when it comes to the production style, except for your day ones or even what was another song that I said? I'll Be There. I liked I'll Be There as well. But then there are the songs where I'm like, okay, if you're going to do the full folk thing, then do it. And then we're like talking about Space Side. Love that track.
Yes.
I love that track. And because it's of the emptiness, you're getting the accentuation of the lyrics that we've been talking about, right? So they gotta, the fight has to be won by somebody. Pick one side and then stick it there, because then it's actually working if you do that. But if we're in the middle, we're trying to like, oh, it's still folk, but we're trying to introduce, then it's like this tug of war that everybody is losing.
I think you make a good point. There's a lot of songs on here where the fight between two genres is one that nobody wins.
Right.
And so let's at least let someone pick a side with this one. So I agree with you here. I want to know what people think in the comments.
Me too.
I'm very interested to see what people think in the comments. Like I said, I have never met a Bon Iver super fan in my entire life. So prove me wrong. Okay, in the comments, get in there. Let me know what you guys think. Of course, find us on the interwebs at Album Mode Pod, on Twitter, Album Mode Pod, on TikTok, Album Mode Pod, on Instagram. If you're watching us on YouTube, we appreciate you. Like this video, subscribe, hit that bell so you know when the videos are coming. And of course, leave us a comment and a 5-star review on all your podcast platforms. 5 stars, not a single star less. We're going to be doing some sound bites coming up, ranking people's whole discographies, okay?
Yes.
If there's some artists that you want us to rank their discography, in the comments, let us know. You can let us know on Spotify in the comments on YouTube as well. But if there's an artist you want us to rank their whole discography, please let us know. And until next time, know yourself, know your worth.
Go Arsenal.